Okay, good. This is the Executive Committee of SANDAG. It's Friday, June 11, 2021. Good morning and welcome everybody. I would like to ask our interpreter, Ruth, to introduce herself and walk us through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting. Ruth?
Yes, good morning. My name is Ruth, and the following message will be repeated in English. Este es un aviso del intérprete, este es un recordatorio. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, que es español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, un celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego Interpretation y luego el idioma. Good morning. This is an announcement from the interpreter. To use the Zoom interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are located. Click on the interpretation icon, which is a world, and select English as your language. If you are joining Zoom using a mobile app, for example, a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipses, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that information. So just a little heads up, my son is graduating from 6th grade today. So I have asked, thank you, Mayor Gloria. So I've asked Mayor Gloria to take over for me in this meeting if need be, and then at the beginning of the next meeting, the board meeting. So it looks like today at the exec committee, we have a pretty straightforward agenda. So let's see if maybe we can knock it out. So Francesca, do we have any non-agenda public comments?
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any hands from the public.
Okay, and then what about board comments? If anybody had a board comment, could put your hand up. Okay, don't see any board comments. So let's go to the meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the May 14th minutes?
Chair, I move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Mayor Gloria and a second by Mayor Sotelo-Solis. So will the clerk please take the roll?
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez, aye.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear.
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. And for South County, Second Vice Chair Sotelo-Solis.
Sotelo-Solis, aye.
Thank you. And that does pass unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So now moving on to our reports, we have Robin here to provide an update on our committees and working groups. Robin?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So this is our annual review of our lower level committees and working groups. I think most folks know, obviously, we have our board of directors, and then you have your 6 policy advisory committees that advise the board of directors. What folks may not be aware of is that we currently have 23 different lower level committees and working groups that then report up to that structure. Those working groups range anywhere from like our technical working group, which is the group of each of your planning directors from each of the local jurisdictions, to our active transportation working group, or our the chair's very own litter abatement subcommittee. So while many of these committees and working groups originally were stood up for a specific objective, projects and priorities obviously have changed over the years. And so as a result, staff is taking a fresh look at these groups to see how we can restructure to better align with our agency priorities and provide a more meaningful opportunity for folks to participate and provide input on our initiatives. Many working group charters are outdated and no longer relevant. So increasingly, we are seeing more and more meeting cancellations, unfortunately, due to the lack of substantive items for discussion. We're also seeing poor engagement and attendance, which is making it difficult to meet quorum. And finally, because of how many of these groups originally were organized, the agenda items are primarily informational, and so they're not eliciting much discussion or feedback. So we've heard from members that they don't feel like they're actually adding value to the SANDAG policymaking process. And we'd like to find a better way to organize ourselves so we can ensure we're setting the agency and the board of directors up for success. Not to mention, a significant amount of resources goes into coordinating and supporting each of these working groups. On average, 30 to 40 staff hours are required for each working group meeting. So with all of this in mind, we just wanted to take this moment to let you know that we are taking this time to really take a fresh look, work with our staff coordinators and the members of each of these groups to find out how can we potentially restructure the working groups and reorganize ourselves. And then we'll come back to this executive committee by the end of the year with some recommendations for you to consider. As we work through this, we of course welcome any feedback that you may have. We recognize that many of you probably have served on some of these lower level committees and working groups for the years. So we'd love to hear any thoughts or ideas or questions. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd just like to say I fully support this type of modification and reform. I have participated in some of these working groups, and I absolutely believe that we are not being as efficient with our time and resources as we could be. So I do hope that really we trim down the number of these groups. So we make them more substantive, but also just have fewer of them, because to meet, to have information presented is just not a good use of the SANDAG resources. So I fully support this. I'm so glad that you're comprehensively evaluating it. And I would also just encourage that we try to have a board connection if there's interest in topics, because that can create that information that comes back up to the board level instead of having them working out to the side and we never hear back from these groups in ways that are meaningful. So those would be my comments. If anyone else wanted to make comments on this, feel free to raise your hand. Yes, Vice Chair Gloria.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, thank you, Robin, for explaining kind of the intent of staff here. You don't have any particular metrics at this point for what would render a recommendation to either eliminate, restructure, or continue any of these groups, do you?
I would offer that perhaps not metrics, but our guiding framework is a strategic plan. And so the board, through the budget process, adopted our 5 priority projects, our strategic initiatives, and our goals. And so using that, we want to align our organizational structure to support our agency initiatives. And so taking a look at, a lot of our working groups right now are organized by function. And those functions aren't really how we approach transportation anymore. So instead of having an active transportation working group, maybe we should have something that's focused more on micromobility. That's sort of an example of how we're looking at this.
Okay, helpful. And then your mention of failing to meet, or perhaps, things like failing to meet quorum, lack of public comment or participation, et cetera. These would be things I'd be curious about, particularly as you look towards any sort of elimination. Agreeing that, sometimes things get started and then they never come to a conclusion. Nothing easier than making a committee, but that isn't necessarily progress or getting anything done. The last thing you mentioned, trying to make a decision or recommendation by the end of the year, correct? And so for members of this committee and for our fellow board colleagues, they should be in touch with you directly if they have strong feelings about preserving any of these particular groups.
Yes, please. And I should offer, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. We are collecting the data, so we will be able to tell you how many meetings were canceled, who's showing up to what. We'll bring all of that back with the recommendations later this year. I
think that would be helpful. Very good. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, staff, for undertaking this, and Robin for the good report on that. Do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands.
Okay, great. Then on to discussion item number 4, which is review of draft board agendas. And I'll call on Victoria.
Good morning. For item 4A is your draft board agenda for June 25th. Item number 1 is public comment, followed by item number 2, which is the report from the executive director. Under your consent calendar, you have item number 3, which is the approval of meeting minutes, followed by the approval of proposed solicitation and contract awards. And item number 5 is your annual public transit report. Item number 6 is the proposed amendments to the conflict of interest code, which we'll be looking for and approve, followed by item number 7, which is the policy advisory committee actions. Item number 8 is the FY22 TDA and STA State Formula Transit Funds. We'll be adopting a resolution. Item number 9 is the public engagement events for the draft 2021 regional plan. This will provide a schedule of upcoming public hearings, and we'll be looking for an approve. Item number 10 is the annual review of committees and working groups, which you just heard today. And item number 11 is the executive director delegated actions for information. And last but not least on the consent calendar is item number 12, which is the meetings and events attended on behalf of SANDAG. Under reports, you'll have item number 13, which is the 2021 ITALK annual report. This is for information. Followed by item number 14, which is the salaries and compensation audit action plan progress report. This is discussion, possible action. Item number 15 is an update on the Midcoast Transit project. And item number 16 is a closed session item. This concludes the June 25th Board of Directors agenda. And if you'd like, I can go on to July 9th.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So agenda item number 4B is the board items for July 9th. Item number 1 is public comments, communication member comments, followed by the executive director's report. Under consent, you have approval of the meeting minutes, followed by policy advisory committee actions. And then item number 5 is the executive director delegated actions. Under report, you have item number 6, which is the workforce development program. We're looking to move item number 6 to a future meeting. And in its place, we are asking you to consider the performance evaluation of the executive director. Item number 7 is the proposed FY22 program budget amendment for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub. We'll be accepting a little over $1 million from MTS to reconfigure and upgrade the San Ysidro Transit Center area. This concludes the July 9th board agenda, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any board questions or comments? Okay, do we have any public questions or comments?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Okay, I would entertain a motion on this.
I'd move the item, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Vice Chair Gloria.
Second. Oh, third.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Voss. We have a second from Mayor Voss.
Thank you very much. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez, I'm sorry, could you repeat your vote for the record?
Oh, yes. Aye.
Thank you very much. For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear.
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. For South County, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Aye.
Thank you very much, and that does pass unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is our legislative status report. So I will call on Hector to start us off today.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So now it's my turn to start this report, and I'm very pleased to provide you with some border highlights. Today, I will talk about the restrictions on the border crossing and some updates on the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, I'll talk about the preliminary results of Mexico's midterm elections and highlights of Vice President Kamala Harris' visit to Mexico City. As you know, your international land border crossings continue operating with restrictions at least until June 21st. And as you know, basically only essential workers and US citizens and residents are allowed to cross into the United States. And you know, this range in the number of thousands. On the other hand, trade continues to flow without restrictions, and it has been growing through this pandemic. According to the Office of CBP, or Customs and Border Protection here in San Diego, when we compare April of last year with April of this year, international trade through your border with Mexico increased 14%. Now, on a yearly base, it accumulates an increase of 4.5, also very significant for our economy. Regarding the state of the pandemic south of the border, the state of Baja California is now in a green status, which means the lowest scale of risk, similar to the yellow color in California. And vaccination is progressing by ages and by sectors. Like right now, teachers are school teachers are being vaccinated and 90% have been already fully vaccinated. Also, I want to remember that President Biden announced that he's sharing vaccines with the neighbors, Canada and Mexico, and 1 million of these doses of the Johnson vaccine will be sent to Mexico, and they are set to arrive this weekend and will be administered in the border region with the United States. And I couldn't have a complete report on this topic without referring to the high-level coordination of the County of San Diego, the Consulate General of Mexico here in San Diego, and the private sector, all working together along with UCSD San Diego. Last month initiated a pilot program, cross-border effort to vaccinate 10,000 maquiladora workers. In this program, workers are recruited by their employers and are being vaccinated daily over 7 non-consecutive days at a temporary UC San Diego Health Mobile Clinic in San Isidro. Interesting to know is that in this program, the companies, the private sector, are covering all the operation and vaccine costs. Regarding the elections in Mexico, last Sunday midterm electoral process, as I mentioned last month, is considered the largest in their history. And because for the first time, a large number of state elections were aligned with the election of the lower house or Congress of Diputados. Besides of the 300 seats of Congress, or 5 that will be divided according to a proportion of elections, the midterm elections included 15 governors, 30 of the 32 state Congress, and over 2,000 municipalities. Of the 93 million people registered to vote in the country, 2.9, almost 3, were registered in the state of Baja California. And in general terms, the incumbent party, Morena, was ratified, although it lost seats in Congress, and it will require to negotiate with other parties or their allied parties when a supermajority might be needed. Also very symbolic was a defeat in several of the alcaldías or delegations, former delegations in Mexico City that had been in the control of the left parties since 1997. But on the other hand, President López Obrador's party, Morena, received around 35% of the overall votes, giving his party the control of half of the state governments in Mexico. So this is a significant territorial growth. And voting participation was also high for midterms, reaching about 55 to 52 nationwide. And in California, Morena won all the positions that were in elections, having 38% of eligible population voting. This is high for Baja California, that historically has the lowest voting participation in Mexico. This is due as many people register and leave and migrate to other places in Mexico or even the United States. Marina del Pilar Avila counted with 45 to 48% of votes, making her the virtual next governor of Baja California for Morena. She will be the first female governor of the state, and her inauguration day is November 1st. The next mayor for Tijuana is going to be Montserrat Caballero, also from Morena, and the inauguration day is between September 1st and 4th. Now, speaking of federal issues, last Monday of this week, June 8th, Vice President Kamala Harris visited Mexico for the first time and met with President López Obrador. And as you know, Vice President Harris carries the task of addressing the routes of immigration from Central American countries to the United States, crossing through Mexico. The crisis of humanitarian refugees was the core of the discussion, but also they addressed other areas of opportunities, such as the implementation of the USMCA Free Trade Agreement. And relevant for this region was the announcement of the reactivation of the High-Level Economic Dialogue, also known as HLED, announcing the first meeting to be held in September. Also, the two countries initiated work to lift restrictions for the land border crossing, and I think that's a good news for our region. And I'm concluding, but let me make 2 commercials. The cross-border bicycle and active transportation community asked me to convey their appreciation for your support in celebrating the 10th anniversary of Bike to Work and Tijuaneando en Bici. Actually, this year was a Bike to Anywhere, celebrated with a virtual cross-border workshop and the participation of Supervisor Nora Vargas, Councilmember Paloma Aguirre, Mayor Carla Ruiz of Tijuana, and Secretary Karen Postlewhite of the state of Baja California. And finally, in purpose, I'm not mentioning Otay Mesa East because your team is proud and excited to present later today in your board meeting an update report with great information. And with this, I'm concluding my report and will pass the screen to Lori Grover, who will be presenting the federal report. Gracias.
Thank you, Hector. So since we last spoke, I provided an update on where Congress was in terms of Biden's American Jobs Plan and the reauthorization process. So while a month has passed since that update, we have learned more, but perhaps not had much progress. In the Politico space, I feel like you can't read an article without infrastructure being mentioned. It's an ever evolving space right now. But in terms of the American Jobs Plan, Biden continues to meet with folks on both sides of the aisle to try and get on the same page as to what an infrastructure bill could look like and how to pay for it. Those conversations are continuing now with a bipartisan group of senators. In the meantime, the House and Senate are doing their work in putting together the pieces for an updated Surface Transportation Authorization Bill, or FAST Act, or the current FAST Act. So beginning in the House, as it's a little bit more streamlined than the Senate process, yesterday morning, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, or T&I Committee, the committee responsible for putting together the surface transportation authorization legislation, passed a 5-year, $550 billion proposal. The bill includes a number of climate resiliency provisions, increasing funding for rail and transit and EV infrastructure spending, in addition to nearly 1,500 member designated projects, which I'm not going to get into right now. Hassan will touch base later at the board meeting in his executive director remarks. This Invest in America Act will go to the House floor vote at the end of this month. So on the Senate side, things are a little less streamlined. Whereas the House has one committee pulling together the pieces of an authorization bill, the Senate has multiple committees doing that work. You have the Senate Environmental and Public Works, or EPW committee, putting together a roads and highway bill. The Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee puts together the transit portion. The Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation weighs in on multimodal surface transportation, rail, freight, and safety. And then finally, the Finance Committee has the really fun job of determining how to plan for that, or how to pay for that bill, excuse me. The EPW unanimously passed its highway title a few weeks ago, which was conservative compared to the House's highway spending amounts. And the Commerce Committee will meet next week for a bill markup. The Banking and Finance Committees have not yet set a hearing date for its title markups. So once both chambers have passed their respective bills, Congress would likely establish a bicameral conference committee to resolve any differences. What happens next remains a big question mark when you take into consideration the jobs plan that Biden is also wrestling. Another factor to consider is how these bills will pass, either through direct order or through the budget reconciliation process. As we like to say in national politics, what we know is what we don't know at this time, but I will keep the group apprised as we learn more, likely in the next month or two. And then finally, I wanted to mention that today is a big day for the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project. As Hector mentioned earlier, today at the board, you'll hear a full report on that project. And then followed by the board of directors meeting, we are touring the Port of Entry site with our full San Diego congressional delegation, which is led by Congressman Vargas. This is an unprecedented milestone for the project, and we look forward to showcasing the project's regional significance and how the delegation can advance this project in DC. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Robin.
Thanks, Lori. So carrying on the Otay Mesa East theme, we had a fantastic meeting with the Lieutenant Governor actually yesterday. We've been working with her office over the past couple of years, and we're happy to see and hear directly from her yesterday that she recognizes the importance of bringing this project to fruition. So we'll keep working with her and the rest of the administration in Sacramento to hopefully keep moving the project forward, as you'll hear more about at the board. In the past few weeks, we've also been very closely engaged and active in the ongoing state discussions. As you may remember, Hassan shared at your last board meeting that the governor's May revise included several key infrastructure funding proposals that could directly benefit Sandag and the region as a whole. I just want to thank board leadership again for participating in our virtual Sacramento fly-in a couple of weeks ago, where we were able to underscore the benefits of some of these proposals. Thankfully, since then, the legislature has released essentially their counter proposal to the governor's May revise. And we've been pleased to see that progress has been made on several of the priorities that we had identified. So I'm just going to highlight a few of those in case any of you happen to be in touch with folks in Sacramento, can help us carry this to the finish line. The first program that we're really excited about is it's being called the Sustainable Community Strategy Block Grant Program. So this would be the very first time that the state has ever provided direct funding to MPOs to actually implement our regional plans. So we're all very familiar with SB 375 and all of the requirements that the state is providing to the MPOs and to the regions to carry out to meet our targets. But it's always been up to us to try to find the funding, whether locally or through grant programs at the state and federal level, to actually deliver the projects to meet our targets. This would be the first time where the state actually puts their hand out and helps provide the resources that we need to do the work together. So it's very exciting. The governor included $500 million in his May revise. The legislature is actually proposing $750 million. So they increased it. It's a great sign. Another program that we're watching closely is related to local and regional climate adaptation. So again, this is something that Sandag and the San Diego region is very involved in. Under SB 1, they actually created a new program for adaptation resiliency grants, but it was only about $20 million for 3 years, and then it went away. The governor's May revise included a similar amount, about $15 million. The legislature, it looks like, is countering back with $400 million. So this would be a huge resource for the region to be able to access those funds and proactively address a lot of the challenges that we're facing, like Del Mar Bluffs and the Los San corridor. The other one that we're watching is the active transportation program. I think many folks are very aware that this program is just severely oversubscribed. Our region always competes very well in the program. Out of the last round, 15 out of our 19 jurisdictions actually applied. So we think that if we are able to augment this program, at least 11 more projects could get some funding if they use the last round as a way to distribute funds. So the governor's May revise included $500 million to augment the program, and the legislature is supporting it at that amount as well. And then the last one that I wanted to mention is broadband. So obviously the board adopted our digital divide resolution in January. We're very much committed to addressing the digital divide both here in San Diego and throughout the state. The governor included $7 billion for this effort in his proposal. The legislature actually has provided the same level of funding, but they're proposing that we distribute it $1 billion per year for the next 7 years. So that's definitely one of the areas where there's very active negotiations going on. We're hearing that it may get pushed past the budget deadline of June 15th and come out in a future trailer bill language. But we are encouraging everyone to take action on this as soon as possible, because we know that the crisis is real and we have to do something now. So we'll continue to keep you updated. Like I said, the deadline to pass the budget is actually next Tuesday, June 15th. So by the time we return at your July meeting, we'll be able to let you know where everything landed. As we're getting closer to passing the budget deadline, we are now pivoting to legislation. So at your last meeting, I mentioned a handful of bills that we have been keeping our eyes on. And so today we're asking the executive committee to actually take action on 6 of those bills to take support positions. Each of the bills that I'll mention today have made it past the House of Origin deadline, meaning if they were introduced in the Assembly, they've gotten all the way through the process and are now in the Senate, and vice versa. They enjoy widespread support. There's no opposition to these bills, and they, of course, advance Sandag priorities and projects, are in line with your approved legislative program for 2021. So I'll just kind of walk through these high level. I just want to make sure you understand what they are, though, and how they benefit us before we ask you to take action. The first couple I want to mention, and these are all outlined in your legislative report packet as well, is SB 4 and AB 14. So these both have to do with the California Advanced Services Fund. This fund is basically a funding program that the Public Utilities Commission oversees that provides funding for broadband deployment throughout the state. That program's currently set to expire in 2022 next year. So both of these bills would extend the existence of this program as well as broaden the eligibility of projects that can be funded through the funding source. As I mentioned, the board obviously passed its resolution in January saying that we are committed to addressing the digital divide, and we all recognize that broadband is critical to the ability to fully benefit from technology advancements that can drastically improve transportation throughout our region and bring technology to communities who need it the most. Like I said, SB 4 and AB 14 would continue this program, which is an important state funding resource to advance the deployment of broadband throughout our region and supports goal number 11 in your legislative program. The next bill on the list is SB 671. This was introduced by Senator Lena Gonzalez, who also happens to be the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. This bill would establish the Clean Freight Corridor Efficiency Assessment. All this essentially means is she's tasking the California Transportation Commission to work with other state agencies to identify corridors throughout the state that would be priority candidates for the deployment of zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles. We know that San Diego has a diverse and an expansive goods movement network. We serve nearly every mode of freight, and we of course enjoy a very competitive advantage from our proximity to the US-Mexico border. As we continue to move towards near zero and zero emission vehicles, electric charging, hydrogen fueling, all other types of ZEV infrastructure, SB 671 is going to be important in creating a framework to help prioritize these regional investments and make funding available for these purposes as well. The next bill on our list is AB 43. I think this is one that probably many of your local jurisdictions are familiar with. This has to do with traffic safety. It was introduced by Assemblymember Laura Friedman, who is the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, and would essentially provide your cities more flexibility on setting speed limits based on safety. We, SANDAG, are committed to planning and building a multimodal infrastructure that enhances community connections to regional transit services. And successful implementation of our regional plan, we know, is going to have to include a new Vision Zero policy that depends on increasing the number of people who use active transportation options. However, without a complementary policy at the state level, it's going to be more challenging for us at the local level to actually realize this. So AB 43 supports a safer multimodal transportation system by providing the local jurisdictions the flexibility you need to set those speed limits in your neighborhoods based on the communities that they serve. And this bill is in line with goal number 6 of your legislative program. Just a couple more. Assembly Bill 117, this has to do with the Air Quality Improvement Program, which again is a funding program that folks can apply for. This was introduced by a member of our legislative delegation, Assemblymember Tasha Borner-Horvath, and it would essentially make the purchase of electric bicycles eligible for funding under the Air Quality Improvement Program Clean Vehicle Rebates Project. We talked about active transportation in the draft 2021 regional plan. Like I said, it includes a vision to create a diverse regional bicycle system that will help make biking more practical and desirable to a broader range of people throughout the region. AB 117 is going to help support this effort by providing the additional funding opportunities for the increased adoption of electric bikes. And this bill is consistent with, again, goal number 6 of your LEG program. And then the last bill that we're presenting to you today is SB 1 by Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins, another member of our legislative delegation. This is a different SB 1. There's been some confusion. So every year the legislature introduces new bills and they get sometimes the same numbers. So this is not the old SB 1, this is a new one. And this has to do with coastal resources. SB 1 would establish the California Sea Level Rise Mitigation and Adaptation Act of 2021. It would create a new program at the Ocean Protection Council to help coordinate and fund state efforts to prepare for sea level rise associated with climate change. We have almost 70 miles of coastline in the San Diego region, and a lot of work is being done both at SANDAG and in partnership with the local jurisdictions to study, plan for, and adapt to the impacts of sea level rise and other coastal hazards. There are 7 coastal jurisdictions in the region, and all of them have been preparing or have adopted vulnerability assessments and local coastal program amendments to incorporate sea level rise science into your land use planning documents. SB1 is going to help elevate the importance of this work and provide much needed funding for us to be able to start to implement projects to address the challenges from sea level rise. This bill is consistent with goal number 12 of your legislative program. So I know I just walked through a lot, but those are the 6 bills that we staff is recommending that Sandy take support positions on. Should the executive committee approve this action, we would submit letters of support to the authors' offices and start to engage our advocates in Sacramento to hopefully help support passage of the bills ultimately this fall. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, the recommendation is that the executive committee approve taking a support position on SB4, AB14, SB671, AB43, AB117, and SB1.
Thank you, Robin, Lori, and Hector for the presentations. I'll ask Francesca, do we have any public speakers on this item?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We actually do have a couple of hands up. First will be Noah Harris, followed by Nicole Burgess. And Noah, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good morning, committee members. This is Noah Harris with Climate Action Campaign. I want to just take a minute to elevate 2 of these bills in particular, AB 43 and AB 117. AB 43 would allow local jurisdictions to set speed limits that prioritize safety for pedestrians and cyclists, which is key to meeting our Vision Zero goals by making it safer for residents to walk and bike throughout our communities. AB 117, which provides incentives for e-bikes, will increase equitable access to this mode. E-bikes are great for replacing shorter car trips for residents of many different ages and abilities, all while securing cleaner air. We urge you to support these as they will help our region meet climate goals and build a more equitable, sustainable transportation future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next will be Nicole Burgess. Nicole, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, committee members. I just want to echo Noah Harris's comments and support these legislative bills, especially AB 43, that really is critical for our cities to create those speed limits that are safer for all users. That's been a very big challenge for our cities in many years past. And AB 117 is wonderful when we have folks that can get on an e-bike and experience their city, San Diego, and truly feel like they have another option besides owning a car. And as mentioned, it is an equitable approach to getting more of the folks to have these kinds of options. So I thank you all, your board, and your support for these and to really get these passed in the state legislative. So thank you and have a great Friday.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. Francesca, I think that's all of our public speakers.
It is. Thank you.
Fantastic. We'll turn now to members of the committee. Are there any committee members that wish to comment on this item or ask questions of staff? Seeing none, please forgive me. Minto, I knew there'd be somebody. Mayor Minto.
Good morning. I think 43 and 117 are extremely important. Of course, having been in that business of traffic, enforcement thing over the years. Now, I don't know, Robin, who has been maybe from Sandag involved in any of these discussions, but currently, the reason why we do some of the things we do with law enforcement and the setting of some of these speed limits is based on case law. And which means that some of these items that are, because after reading them, I remember, 30 years ago, many of these things were in the statutes or were handled by our local jurisdictions. But case law changed that, which said you can't do that anymore. You have to have other, items and, parts to it that come up with how you determine the speed, and especially with the prima facie speed. And the prima facie speed is a very misunderstood section of law. For instance, all it means is that first glance, this is what you should drive. And instead, people think that's an absolute speed limit, where the basic speed law is what we should be addressing. And that is, you can't drive any faster than reasonable, necessary, based on, and that's already included in the law, where one, I forget which one of them, talks about adding in their pedestrians and traffic and other parts to how we would determine the speed. It's already included in the law. So I guess my point is, who's having these conversations? Are they including what's already, case law that says you can't do things or you have to do things? So I guess those would be my questions about that, and whether we would support laws that are already probably going to may fail just because of case law. So I think that's something we need to really take a look at. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Minto. Definitely outside of my my expertise to try and respond to any of that. I defer to you. I know you know your way around a ticket book. Any other comments or questions from committee members? We do have a recommendation for action to recommend these bills. I would just thank staff for identifying them, and I'm glad to see we have two local legislators bills on this slate of legislation. Given my last job, I know what it is to have the support for your local agencies. I think that's they're good legislation on their own, but it's also a good way to make sure we're supporting our local delegation as they do work on behalf of this agency in the Capitol at a time of abundant resources where we want to make sure we get our fair share for the region. Yeah, any motions by members of the committee to approve the requested action?
So moved, Sotelo Solis.
Thank you. We have a motion, City of National City. Is there a second to the motion?
Happy to second. It's Tara.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor. We have a second by the County of San Diego. Francesca, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Vice Chair. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez, aye.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss. Mayor Voss, I don't think Mayor Voss is with us. Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And for South County, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you very much, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Again, appreciation to staff. These are always very good presentations, and to the members of the public who spoke on this item. Committee, that brings us to the end of our work this morning. We will adjourn this meeting of the Executive Committee to our next meeting, which is on July the 9th. I will see you all at 9 a.m. at our board meeting. Enjoy your 15 minutes of free time.